I won $12 million and didn't tell a soul. Not my brother, not my mother, and definitely not my father, the man whose sofa I was sleeping on after losing my job. 3 days after I bought that winning ticket, he sent me a text message at 9:32 p.m. "You're a parasite, $500 a month or get out." So I left $500 on his kitchen table and walked out before sunrise. 1 week later, he saw me on the evening news holding a check bigger than everything he'd ever earned combined. He didn't call to apologize. He called his lawyer. He sued me for family support. He invited 12 church members to the courtroom to watch him win. But when the judge looked at him and said 5 words, those same church members walked out without saying goodbye. My name is Lottie Dawson. I'm 28 years old. And this is the story of how my father tried to take what wasn't his and lost everything that was. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. It started with an email, December 20th, 2024, 3 days before Christmas. I was sitting at my desk at Thompson & Reed, a mid-sized accounting firm in downtown Houston where I'd worked for 4 years. 4 years of overtime. 4 years of perfect performance reviews. 4 years of believing that if I just worked hard enough, I'd be safe. The email came at 4:47 p.m. Due to restructuring, your position has been eliminated effective immediately. Please collect your personal belongings and return your keycard to HR by 5 o'clock p.m. 13 minutes. That's how long they gave me to erase 4 years. I wasn't the only one. 15% of the staff got the same email that day, 23 people total. But knowing that didn't make it hurt less. I packed my desk into a single cardboard box, a coffee mug, a photo of my mom, a small succulent I'd kept alive for 2 years. Everything else belonged to them. By January 1st, I couldn't make rent on my apartment in Midtown, $1,200 a month, and my savings account showed exactly $847. My landlord gave me 30 days to vacate, a kindness, he said, because of the holidays. I sat on my bed that night, scrolling through my contacts. Mom was in Arizona, rebuilding her life after divorcing my father 8 years ago. My brother Derek was in Dallas, too busy being a rising star at his law firm to answer calls from his unemployed sister. That left one option. I called my father. "Dad, I need a place to stay, just for a few weeks, until I find a new job." There was a pause, then, "Fine, but this is temporary, Lottie." I moved into his house on December 28th, carrying 2 suitcases and a laptop. I didn't know those 2 suitcases would be the only things I'd take when I left. My father's house hadn't changed in 20 years. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a 2-car garage in a quiet subdivision in Katy, just west of Houston. He'd paid off the mortgage 5 years ago, a fact he mentioned at least once a week. The walls were still the same beige. The carpet was still the same cream color that showed every stain. And the photos on the wall were still the same. 3 frames in the living room. All of them featured my brother Derek. Derek graduating from Rice University. Derek shaking hands with a judge at his law school ceremony. Derek receiving some award I couldn't identify from across the room. Not a single photo of me. I noticed it the first night, lying on the sofa that would become my bed. The leather was cold, and the cushions smelled faintly of cigars. My father's Sunday ritual with his friends from church. I pulled a thin blanket over myself and stared at Derek's face on the wall, illuminated by the streetlight outside. The next morning, my father made his expectations clear. We were eating breakfast, scrambled eggs he'd made, though he reminded me twice that he wasn't running a restaurant, when he brought up Derek for the first time. "Your brother just made partner track," he said, not looking up from his plate. "At 33, Morrison and Foley, one of the best firms in Texas." "That's great for him," I said. "He had 3 offers before he even graduated." 3. He finally looked at me. "What were you doing at 28? "Oh, right, getting laid off." I didn't respond. I'd learned a long time ago that responding only made it worse. But I felt it, that familiar tightening in my chest, the same feeling I'd had since I was 12 years old, watching my father beam at Derek's report card while barely glancing at mine. I told myself I would only stay 2 weeks. New Year's Day, 2025. My father invited two of his friends from church over for lunch. Bill Hartley and Tom Reeves, both retired, both members of the same men's group my father had led for 6 years. They arrived at noon, wearing pressed khakis and polo shirts, carrying a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I tried to stay in the guest room, technically Derek's old room, though he hadn't slept there in 5 years. But my father called me out. Lottie, come say hello to Bill and Tom. I walked into the living room, wearing jeans and a sweater I'd owned since college. Bill and Tom smiled politely. This is my daughter, my father said. He paused, as if searching for something positive to add. She's between opportunities right now, living on my sofa for the time being. Oh, Bill said, his smile faltering slightly. Are you helping her get back on her feet, Gerald? My father laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. More like carrying dead weight. The words hit me like a slap. Bill and Tom shifted uncomfortably. I stood there, frozen, feeling my face burn. Excuse me, I said quietly, and walked out the front door. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked. Down the driveway, past the manicured lawns, past the neighbors' Christmas decorations still blinking in the afternoon light. I walked until I reached the intersection of Westheimer and Derry Ashford, where a 7-Eleven sat on the corner. It was 6:30 p.m. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. A poster in the window caught my eye. Mega Millions, $12 million jackpot tonight. I reached into my pocket. $7. Crumpled bills I'd forgotten were there. Enough for 3 tickets. The 7-Eleven smelled like coffee and hot dogs that had been sitting too long. A woman stood behind the counter, mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, name tag reading Maria. She was restocking cigarettes when I walked in, but she turned and smiled. What can I get you? 3 Mega Millions tickets, I said. Quick picks. She raised an eyebrow slightly. Not judgmental, just curious. Feeling lucky tonight? I almost laughed. I'm feeling desperate. Close enough, right? Maria smiled, a real smile this time. Desperate works sometimes. You never know. She printed the tickets. The machine whirred and clicked, spitting out 3 slips of paper with random numbers I didn't bother to read. $6 total. I handed her my crumpled bills. Keep the change, I said, though the change was only $1. Good luck, hun. The receipt printed at exactly 6:47 p.m., January 2nd, 2025. I didn't think about it at the time, but that timestamp would matter later. That receipt, with Maria's initials and the store's address printed at the top, would become the first piece of evidence in a case I didn't know was coming. I bought a bottle of water with my last dollar and walked outside. The sun had fully set now, and the parking lot was lit by fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly overhead. I sat on the curb, holding 3 lottery tickets and a bottle of water, and thought about what my father had said. Dead weight. I'd been called a lot of things in my life. Quiet, shy, not as ambitious as your brother. But dead weight was new. Dead weight implied I was dragging him down. Dead weight implied I was a burden he was forced to carry. I looked at the tickets in my hand. Maybe, I thought, just once, something could go right. I sat on that curb for almost an hour. The temperature had dropped to 45 degrees, and I was shivering in my thin sweater, but I couldn't make myself go back. Not yet. Not while Bill and Tom were probably still there, drinking wine and listening to my father talk about what a disappointment I was. I thought about my mother, Patricia Dawson, though she'd gone back to her maiden name, Patricia Holloway, after the divorce. She lived in Scottsdale now, in a small condo she'd bought with her settlement money. We talked maybe twice a year, always on birthdays, always brief. The divorce had been ugly, and I'd made the mistake of staying neutral, which meant both parents felt betrayed. But I remembered something she'd said to me once, the last time I visited her before she moved. Your father sees people as investments, Lottie. If you don't give him returns, you're a liability. That's why I had to leave. And someday, you'll have to leave too. I hadn't understood it then. I was 20 years old, still believing that if I just tried harder, worked harder, achieved more, he would finally see me. 8 years later, sitting on a curb outside a convenience store, I finally understood. I wasn't going to win his approval. Not ever. He'd already decided what I was worth, and no amount of effort would change his mind. If I stayed in that house, I would shrink. Every comparison to Derek, every casual insult in front of his friends, every reminder that I was between opportunities, it would chip away at me until there was nothing left. I stood up, my legs stiff from the cold. I didn't know if those lottery tickets would win. But I knew one thing. I had to leave that house within 2 weeks, no matter what. The drawing was at 10 p.m. I had 3 hours to wait. I got back to my father's house at 9:30. Bill and Tom had left. My father was in his recliner, watching a football game, a glass of bourbon on the side table. He didn't look up when I walked in. Where were you? Went for a walk. He grunted. That was the end of the conversation. I lay down on the sofa, pulled the blanket over myself, and opened the lottery app on my phone. The drawing was scheduled for 10 o'clock p.m. Central. I set an alarm for 10:15. Just in case I fell asleep, I didn't fall asleep. At 10:02 p.m., the results posted. I pulled up my tickets. I'd taken photos of them before leaving the store, a habit I'd developed years ago after losing a $5 winner in the wash. The first ticket? Nothing. The second ticket? Nothing. The third ticket. I stared at the screen. Then I checked the numbers again. Then I opened the official Mega Millions website and compared them manually, one by one. 7, 14, 28, 33, 52. Megaball, 11. All 6 numbers matched. My heart stopped. Then it started again, pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I checked a 4th time, a 5th time. I opened 3 different websites, cross-referencing every single number. $12 million. Before taxes. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I lay there in the dark, listening to my father snore in the next room, and thought about what he'd said that afternoon. Dead weight. The first thought in my head wasn't, I'm rich. It wasn't, my life is about to change. It was, they can never call me a failure again. And the second thought, coming immediately after, I'm not telling anyone. Not yet. Not until the money is mine. The next morning, my father knocked on the living room doorframe at 7 o'clock a.m. sharp. I was already awake. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours, my mind racing with numbers and plans and a future I couldn't quite believe was real. But I kept my face neutral as I sat up. We need to talk about your situation, he said. He was dressed for church, pressed slacks, a blue button-down, his silver hair combed back. He looked like the respectable retired banker everyone in his congregation believed him to be. What situation? You've been here a week. He crossed his arms. I'm not running a charity, Lottie. I'm looking for work, Dad. It takes time. Derek never needed to look for work. He said it like the words tasted sour. He had offers before graduation, 3 of them. I'm not Derek. Clearly. The conversation ended there. He left for church without another word, and I spent the morning researching how to claim a lottery prize in Texas without alerting your family. But that night, at 9:32 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my father. You're a parasite. $500 month or get out. I'm done supporting your failures. I read it 3 times. Each time the words cut deeper, not because they surprised me, but because they confirmed everything I'd always suspected. To him, I wasn't his daughter. I was a line item on a budget, an expense to be minimized. I took a screenshot. I don't know why I did it. Instinct, maybe. Or some part of me that knew, even then, that I might need proof someday. I saved it to my cloud storage. Then I saved it again to my email drafts. Then I started packing. January 4th, 2025, 6 o'clock a.m. My father was still asleep. I could hear him snoring through his bedroom door. The same deep, rumbling snore I remembered from childhood, the sound that meant he wouldn't wake for at least another hour. I moved quietly. I counted out $500 in cash, 20s and 10s I'd withdrawn from my savings account before I lost my apartment. It was almost everything I had left, but that didn't matter anymore. In a few days, I would have more money than I'd ever imagined. I left the bills on the kitchen table, fanned out so he couldn't miss them. Next to them, I placed a note on a yellow post-it. Rent for January. Thank you for your hospitality. No love, Lottie. No, I'll call you. Just the facts. I picked up my 2 suitcases and my laptop bag. I took one last look at the living room. The sofa I'd slept on for a week, Derek's photos on the wall, the beige carpet and the beige walls and the beige life my father had built for himself. Then I walked out the front door and closed it softly behind me. The Uber arrived at 6:15 a.m., a silver Toyota Camry driven by a man named Ronald, who didn't ask questions, just helped me load my suitcases into the trunk. Where to? Marriott Marquis, downtown. It was a splurge, $200 a night, but I needed somewhere safe, somewhere private, somewhere I could think. I'd figure out the rest later. As the car pulled away from my father's house, I looked back one last time through the rear window. The lights were still off. He was still asleep, oblivious to the fact that his parasite daughter had just become a millionaire. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. The first call I made from my hotel room was to the Texas Lottery Commission. It was January 5th, a Sunday, so I got a recorded message directing me to their website. I spent 3 hours reading every page: how to claim a prize, what documents I needed, what taxes would be withheld. And then I found the section that changed everything. For prizes over $1 million, we strongly recommend consulting with a financial advisor and attorney before claiming your prize. Below that was a list of recommended professionals. One name stood out: Marcus Webb, attorney at law, specializing in lottery winner protection and asset management. I called his office first thing Monday morning. Webb Law Group, how may I help you? I need to speak with Mr. Webb. It's about a lottery prize. A pause. Then, how large is the prize, ma'am? $12 million. Another pause, longer this time. Mr. Webb can see you this afternoon, 2 o'clock. Can you make it to our Galleria office? Marcus Webb was not what I expected. Mid-40s, graying at the temples, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to be. But his handshake was firm, and his eyes were kind. First thing I tell every client, he said, settling into his chair across from me. Don't tell your family until the money is secured. Family is the #1 source of lawsuits against lottery winners. I haven't told anyone. Good, he nodded approvingly. Keep it that way. Now tell me about your situation. I told him everything: the job loss, the sofa, the comparisons to Derek, and finally the text message. You're a parasite. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something hardened in his eyes. Keep that text message, Hasasa, he said. In my experience, people who call their children parasites don't stop at words. Over the next 3 days, Marcus built a fortress around my winnings. First, the evidence. He had me bring in the original lottery ticket, which I'd kept in a Ziploc bag inside my laptop case, paranoid about losing it. And he made 3 certified copies. The original went into a fireproof safe at his office. We need to verify the purchase, he said. Do you remember where you bought it? 7-Eleven on Westheimer in Derry, Ashford, January 2nd, around 6:45 p.m. He made a note. I'll contact the store manager and request a copy of the security footage. That timestamp on your receipt matches their cameras. If anyone ever challenges your ownership of this ticket, we'll have 3 layers of proof: the receipt, the video, and the store employee who sold it to you. Next, the text message. I showed him the screenshot on my phone, and he had his paralegal print it with the full metadata visible: date, time, sender's number, carrier information. This is from your father's phone? Yes. And you were living in his house when he sent this? On his sofa, yes. Marcus nodded slowly. If he tries anything, and in my experience, when family members find out about lottery winnings, they often try something. This message will be very useful. It establishes his attitude toward you before he knew about the money. He opened a new bank account for me at a private bank I'd never heard of. No connection to my father's old employer, no shared accounts, no paper trail leading back to anyone in my family. The money will be deposited here after you claim the prize, he said. No one will know about it unless you tell them. I signed the paperwork with hands that were surprisingly steady. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in control. There was one problem I couldn't solve: Texas law. Marcus explained it to me on January 8th, 3 days before my scheduled claim date. Texas Government Code Section 466.022, he said, sliding a printed document across his desk. Winners of prizes over $1 million are required to have their name and city of residence publicly disclosed. You can delay the announcement, but you can't avoid it entirely. I stared at the document. So everyone will know. Everyone who watches the news or reads the paper. Yes. I thought about my father, about Derek, about the church friends who had heard him call me dead weight. Then I want to control it, I said. If it's going to be public anyway, I want to be the one who decides how it happens. Marcus smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him. That's exactly the right approach. We'll schedule the claim for January 10th. I'll coordinate with the Lottery Commission's PR team. You'll do one press appearance, answer a few questions, and then you disappear. No follow-up interviews, no human interest stories, no where are they now pieces. And my father? He'll find out when everyone else does. That's unavoidable. Marcus paused. But here's what I want you to understand, Lottie. He has no legal claim to this money. None. You bought that ticket with your own funds. You were an adult living temporarily in his home, not a dependent. Texas doesn't have filial responsibility laws requiring adult children to support their parents. Whatever he tries, and he might try something, he will fail. I nodded, but my stomach was tight. I knew my father. I knew how he reacted when he felt entitled to something and didn't get it. Marcus was right. He would try something. I just didn't know how far he would go. Okay, I need to pause here for a second. If you're still watching, I want to know. Have you ever had a family member who only saw your value when you had something they wanted? Drop a comment below and tell me your story. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. Because what my father did next, I still can't believe it happened. January 10th, 2025, 2:00 p.m. The Texas Lottery Commission headquarters in Austin was smaller than I expected, a nondescript government building with beige walls and fluorescent lighting. But the conference room where they held the press event was anything but ordinary. A giant ceremonial check leaned against the wall. Pay to the order of Lottie Dawson. 12,000 cameras from 3 local news stations pointed at a small podium. A photographer from the Austin American-Statesman adjusted his lens. I wore a navy blue blazer I'd bought the day before, the nicest thing I'd owned in years, and kept my hands clasped in front of me to hide the trembling. "Ms. Dawson," the Lottery Commission representative said, "are you ready?" I nodded. The cameras started rolling. "Lottie, congratulations on your win. What's the first thing you plan to do with the money?" I'd rehearsed this answer with Marcus. Keep it simple. Keep it positive. Don't mention family. Pay off my debts, I said. Set up a foundation for job training programs and find a place to call my own. Any advice for other lottery players? I thought about the 7-Eleven, the crumpled bills in my pocket, Maria's smile. Sometimes desperate works, I said. You never know. The interview lasted 12 minutes. I smiled. I shook hands. I posed with the giant check while cameras flashed. And then it was over. The segment aired on Cool 11 News at 6 p.m. that evening. By 6:15, it had been picked up by the Houston Chronicle's website. By 7 o'clock, it was trending locally on social media. I was in my hotel room eating room service pasta when my phone started buzzing. 17 missed calls, all from the same number, my father. I didn't answer. I let the calls go to voicemail, 17 of them, then 18, then 22. Each one added a new message, and I listened to them in order, sitting on the edge of my hotel bed with the TV muted in the background. The first few were confused. Lottie, I just saw the news. Call me back. Is this real? Did you actually win the lottery? Then they shifted to accusatory. You were living in my house when you bought that ticket. You used my electricity, my water, my food. That money belongs to the family. And finally, threatening. If you don't call me back in the next hour, I'm calling my lawyer. I mean it, Lottie. This isn't over. I saved every voicemail. Marcus had told me to document everything, and I was learning to listen to him. At 8:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Dad just called me. He's furious. Says you won $12 million and didn't tell anyone. Is that true? I typed back, yes, it's true. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Why didn't you tell us? I thought about how to answer, about the sofa, about the photos on the wall, about dead weight and parasite, and 1,000 small cuts over 28 years. Ask Dad what he called me the night before I left. Derek didn't respond. But 45 minutes later my father did, not with a call this time, but with a voicemail that made my blood run cold. I talked to Harold Benson. He says I have a case. You were living under my roof when you bought that ticket, Lottie. That makes it family property. I'm giving you one chance to do the right thing. Share the money, or I'll see you in court. He called again the next morning. I was having breakfast in the hotel restaurant, scrambled eggs, toast, coffee I barely tasted, when his name appeared on my screen. This time, against my better judgment, I answered. Lottie? His voice was warm, almost friendly, the voice he used with his church friends. I'm glad you picked up. We need to talk about this like adults. There's nothing to talk about, Dad. Sweetheart, I think there is. I could hear him forcing patience into his tone. You were living under my roof when you bought that ticket. I was supporting you, feeding you. That has to count for something. You charged me $500 rent. That was... He paused. That was a misunderstanding. I was frustrated. You know how I get. You called me a parasite. Silence. I have the text message, Dad. Time-stamped. Saved. More silence. When he spoke again, the warmth was gone. You're really going to do this? After everything I've done for you? What have you done for me? The words came out before I could stop them. You compared me to Derek every day. You called me dead weight in front of your friends. You demanded rent when I was sleeping on your sofa because I had nowhere else to go. I raised you, and I'm grateful for that. But this money is mine. I bought the ticket with my own $6. I claimed it legally, and I don't owe you anything. We're family, Lottie. Family doesn't call each other parasites. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but my voice had been steady. That felt like a victory. I forwarded the voicemails to Marcus and texted him. He's threatening to sue. What do we do? His response came in under a minute. Let him try. He didn't just try, he went all in. On January 12th, 2 days after my press appearance, Gerald Dawson filed a civil lawsuit against me in Harris County District Court. The case number was 2025 CV00847. I know because Marcus called me with the news while I was apartment hunting in Montrose. He's claiming family support, Marcus said, and I could hear the disbelief in his voice. His lawyer is arguing that because you were living in his home when you purchased the ticket, and because he provided you with shelter and sustenance, he's entitled to a portion of your winnings. Is that is that a real thing? No. Marcus's tone was flat. Texas has no filial responsibility laws for adult children. You were 28 years old, temporarily staying in his home, and you paid him rent. He has no legal standing whatsoever. Then why is he doing this? Because he's angry, because he feels entitled, and because his lawyer is either incompetent or just happy to take his money. Marcus paused. The hearing is scheduled for January 15th, 3 days from now. That fast? He requested an expedited hearing. The judge granted it, probably because she wants to dismiss this nonsense quickly and clear her docket. I sat down on a bench outside a coffee shop, my apartment listings forgotten. There's something else, Marcus said. He's invited witnesses, 12 members of his church. He wants them there to watch him win. I closed my eyes. My father had always cared more about appearances than reality. He wanted a public victory. He wanted his friends to see his ungrateful daughter put in her place. He was about to get a public humiliation instead. I'll be there, I said. Tell me what I need to do. Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. 8:45 a.m. The Harris County Civil Courthouse was a brutalist concrete structure downtown, all sharp angles and narrow windows. I'd driven past it 100 times without ever thinking I'd end up inside. Marcus met me in the lobby, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a suit that probably cost more than my father's car payment. He looked calm. I felt like I might throw up. Courtroom 4B, he said, 4th floor. The judge is Eleanor Vance, 22 years on the bench, no tolerance for frivolous lawsuits. This is exactly the judge we want. We took the elevator in silence. When the doors opened on the 4th floor, I saw them immediately. My father stood at the end of the hallway, surrounded by a cluster of people I recognized from his church. Bill Hartley was there, the same Bill who had watched my father call me dead weight. Tom Reeves stood beside him. 10 others I knew by face, if not by name, all dressed in their Sunday best on a Wednesday morning. They had come to watch Gerald Dawson win. My father saw me and smiled, not a warm smile, but a triumphant one. The smile of a man who believed he had already won. "Lottie," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm glad you came. This doesn't have to be ugly. You can still do the right thing." I didn't respond. Marcus put a hand on my elbow and guided me toward the courtroom doors. Inside, the room was smaller than I expected. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights, rows of bench seating like a church. About 45 people total: lawyers, clerks, the church group, and 2 reporters from the Houston Chronicle sitting in the back row with notebooks open. The bailiff called the room to order. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Eleanor Vance presiding. Judge Vance was exactly what Marcus had described: mid-50s, silver-streaked hair pulled back severely, reading glasses perched on her nose. She reviewed the file in front of her for a long moment before looking up. "Mr. Benson," she said, addressing my father's lawyer, "you may present your case." Harold Benson stood. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with slicked back hair and a suit that didn't quite fit right. He cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Gerald Dawson, is a retired banking professional and upstanding member of his community. When his daughter fell on hard times, he opened his home to her. He provided shelter, food, and support during her most difficult period." I watched my father nod along, his expression solemn and long-suffering. "The lottery ticket in question," Benson continued, "was purchased while Ms. Dawson was living under Mr. Dawson's roof, benefiting from his generosity. We believe there is a moral and familial obligation for Ms. Dawson to share her windfall with the family that supported her during her time of need." Judge Vance's expression didn't change. "And what is the legal basis for this claim?" Benson hesitated. "Your Honor, while Texas may not have specific filial responsibility statutes, we believe that principles of equity and unjust enrichment." Mr. Benson, the judge's voice was flat. I asked for a legal basis. Do you have one? We, we believe the court has discretion to consider the moral dimensions. I see. Judge Vance made a note. Is there anything else? My father leaned over and whispered something to his lawyer. Benson nodded reluctantly. My client would like to make a brief statement, Your Honor. Very well. Mr. Dawson, you may speak. My father stood, smoothing his jacket, and turned slightly so his church friends could see his face. I raised her, he said. I paid for her education. I gave her a place to stay when she had nothing. Is this how she repays me? Marcus rose slowly, buttoning his jacket with deliberate calm. Your Honor, I'd like to present 3 pieces of evidence that will clarify the nature of Mr. Dawson's support. He opened his briefcase and withdrew a folder. First, the original lottery ticket receipt. He handed a copy to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Purchased at the 7-Eleven on Westheimer Road, January 2nd, 2025, at 6:47 p.m. The store manager has provided a sworn statement confirming the transaction, along with security camera footage showing my client purchasing the ticket with her own money, $6 in cash. Judge Vance examined the receipt, then nodded. Continue. Second, the security footage itself. Marcus gestured to a laptop his paralegal had set up. I can play the relevant 30 seconds if the court wishes, but the key point is clear. Ms. Dawson purchased this ticket independently, using her personal funds, with no involvement from Mr. Dawson. Noted. And the third piece of evidence? Marcus paused. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but it carried through the silent courtroom. A text message sent by Mr. Dawson to my client on January 3, 2025 at 9:32 p.m. He handed another document to the bailiff. I watched my father's face as the judge began to read. I'll read this aloud for the record, Judge Vance said. Her voice was neutral, but something had shifted in her expression. You're a parasite. $500 a month or get out. I'm done supporting your failures. The courtroom was silent. I looked at the church members in the gallery. Bill Hartley's face had gone pale. Tom Reeves was staring at his shoes. My father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. This, Marcus said, is the support Mr. Dawson claims entitles him to $12 million. Judge Vance set down the document and removed her reading glasses. Mr. Dawson. My father stood straighter, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Did you send this text message to your daughter? He glanced at his lawyer, who offered no help. It was a moment of frustration, Your Honor. I didn't mean... Did you or did you not call your daughter a parasite and demand $500 in rent? The word hung in the air. Parasite. I watched the church members shift uncomfortably in their seats. Yes, my father said finally. But context matters. She was unemployed, living in my house, contributing nothing. And did she pay the rent you demanded? She left $500 on my kitchen table, yes. So she fulfilled your demand. Judge Vance's voice was ice. She paid what you asked, and then she left your home. But the ticket was purchased while she was still living. Mr. Dawson. The judge held up a hand. I'm going to stop you there. The courtroom went completely silent. I could hear the scratch of the reporters' pens in the back row. Judge Vance leaned forward slightly. Let me make sure I understand your position. You called your adult daughter a parasite. You demanded rent from her while she was sleeping on your sofa after losing her job. She paid that rent and left your home. And now, because she subsequently won a lottery prize, you believe you're entitled to a portion of her winnings? My father opened his mouth, then closed it. Is that an accurate summary, Mr. Dawson? When you put it that way, I'm putting it the way the evidence shows it. Judge Vance straightened. I've heard enough. Judge Vance looked directly at my father. The courtroom held its breath. 45 people, including the 12 church members my father had invited to witness his victory, sat frozen in their seats. And then she said it. 5 words. You are not a victim. My father's face went white. The judge continued, her voice steady and cold. Mr. Dawson, Texas does not have filial responsibility laws requiring adult children to financially support their parents. Your daughter was a 28-year-old woman who temporarily stayed in your home after losing her job. She was not your dependent. She was not your ward. She was a guest. A guest you insulted, demeaned, and ultimately charged rent. She held up the text message printout. This message, which you admit to sending, demonstrates that you did not support your daughter out of love or familial duty. You called her a parasite. You called her a failure. You demanded payment for basic hospitality. And now, because she has come into money, you want to claim a share of it. Judge Vance set down the paper. This case is dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Dawson, you have no legal claim to your daughter's lottery winnings, not now, not ever. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to pay the defendant's legal fees, as this lawsuit was frivolous and without merit. She looked at him one more time. I strongly advise you to reflect on what the word family actually means. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. Behind me I heard movement. The church members standing, gathering their things, filing out without a word to my father. Not one of them stopped to offer comfort. Not one of them even looked at him. I have to stop here and ask you something, Q. When the judge said those 5 words, "You are not a victim," what did you feel? Because I felt something I hadn't felt in years, like someone finally saw the truth. If this story is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment. I want to know if you've ever had a moment like this, when someone in authority finally saw what your family refused to see. I was halfway down the courthouse hallway when I heard his footsteps behind me. Lottie, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. Marcus stood beside me, one hand on his briefcase, ready to intervene if necessary. We need to talk, my father said. His voice was different now, smaller, almost pleading. Please. I turned. He looked older than he had an hour ago. The confidence was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen on his face before. Desperation. What is there to talk about, Dad? This isn't how I wanted things to go. He stepped closer. I made mistakes. I know that now. But we're family, Lottie. You can't just what? I kept my voice level. Can't just refuse to give you money you have no right to? Can't just walk away from someone who called me a parasite? I was angry. I didn't mean it. You meant every word. I took a breath. You've been comparing me to Derek my whole life. You told your friends I was dead weight. You demanded rent when I was sleeping on your sofa because I had nowhere else to go. And when I left, you didn't call to apologize. You called a lawyer. His mouth opened, but no words came out. From now on, I said, if you need to contact me, you go through my lawyer. Mr. Webb will handle any communication. Lottie, that's my boundary, Dad. It's not negotiable. I turned and walked toward the elevator. Marcus fell into step beside me. My father didn't follow. When the elevator doors closed, I finally let myself exhale. My hands were shaking, but my voice had been steady, my words had been clear, and for the first time in my life, I had set a boundary with my father. And I had meant it. The reporters caught up with us outside the courthouse. There were 2 of them, a man and a woman, both carrying notebooks and digital recorders. The woman spoke first. Ms. Dawson, I'm Sarah Chen. She caught herself. Sarah Collins, Houston Chronicle. Do you have any comment on the judge's ruling? I glanced at Marcus. He gave a slight nod. I'm grateful the court saw the truth, I said. I don't wish my father any harm, but I also won't be taken advantage of. That's all I have to say. What about the text message? The one where he called you a... I think the judge's words speak for themselves. The male reporter, young, eager, probably new to the job, tried a different angle. Mr. Dawson, any response to the ruling? I turned slightly. My father was emerging from the courthouse doors alone. His church friends had already dispersed, heading to their cars without waiting for him. He saw the reporters and froze. No comment, he muttered, and walked quickly toward the parking garage. The reporters let him go. They had their story. That evening, the Houston Chronicle published an article online. The headline read, "Lottery winner's father loses family support lawsuit after calling daughter parasite." The article included the judge's quote, "You are not a victim," and a summary of the text message evidence. It mentioned that Gerald Dawson was a retired banking professional and longtime member of his church community. By midnight, the article had been shared over 3,000 times on Facebook. By morning, that number had doubled. I didn't read the comments. I didn't need to. The truth was out there now, in black and white, for anyone who wanted to see it, including everyone my father had ever tried to impress. The fallout came faster than I expected. I heard about it secondhand through Derek, who called me 3 days after the hearing. He sounded tired. "Dad went to church on Sunday," he said, "first time since the trial." "How did that go?" A long pause. "Not well." According to Derek, my father had arrived at his usual time, wearing his usual suit, expecting his usual seat in the third pew. But something was different. The people who normally greeted him at the door, the same people who had watched him lose in court, didn't make eye contact. The handshakes that used to be warm and lingering were brief and perfunctory. After the service, Pastor Mitchell had asked to speak with him privately. "Several members have expressed concern," the pastor had said. "The article, the things you said to your daughter, Gerald, calling your child a parasite is not something we can simply overlook." My father had tried to explain. Context, frustration, a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Pastor Mitchell had listened, then said, "I think you should take some time away from the Leadership Council to reflect." The Leadership Council. My father had served on it for 8 years. It was his proudest achievement outside of Derek's career, proof that he was respected, admired, a pillar of the community. And now it was gone. "He's not taking it well," Derek said. "He keeps saying the judge was biased, that you manipulated the situation, that none of this is his fault." "Of course he does." "Lottie," Derek hesitated. "I'm not saying you were wrong. I'm just saying, he's still our father." "He's still the man who called me a parasite," I said. "That doesn't change just because he's facing consequences." Derek didn't have an answer for that. Derek called again a week later. This time his voice was different, less defensive, more uncertain, like he was finally seeing something he'd been avoiding for years. "I talked to Mom," he said. I set down my coffee cup. "You talked to Mom?" "She called me. After she saw the article." He paused. "She said she wasn't surprised. About any of it." "She wouldn't be. She told me things, Lottie. About why she really left. About how Dad treated her. I always thought—" He stopped. "I always thought she was exaggerating. Or being dramatic. But after watching what happened in that courtroom, I waited." "I'm sorry," Derek said finally. "I should have seen it sooner. I should have asked you what was really going on instead of just assuming Dad was right." It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase 28 years of being the overlooked sibling, the one who never measured up, the one whose photos didn't hang on the wall. But it was real. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "Dad asked me to talk to you, to convince you to forgive him, or at least drop the legal fees." "What did you tell him?" "I told him I couldn't do that." Derek's voice was firm. "And I told him he needs to apologize, really apologize, before anything else. Not because he wants something from you, but because he actually understands what he did wrong." "Do you think he will?" A long silence. "Honestly, no. I don't think he's capable of it. He's spent his whole life believing he's the victim in every situation. That's not going to change because a judge told him otherwise." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Then I guess we're done here." I guess we are. 2 weeks after the hearing, an email appeared in my inbox. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Part of me wanted to delete it unread. But another part, the part that had spent 28 years hoping my father would finally see me, needed to know what he had to say. Lottie, I know I made mistakes. I was wrong to say those things to you. You're my daughter and I love you. Can we please talk? I want to make this right, Dad. 47 words. No acknowledgement of what he'd actually done. No understanding of why it was wrong. Just, I made mistakes. Passive, vague, the kind of non-apology that puts the burden on the victim to forgive without the offender having to change. I forwarded the email to Marcus with a note. For the record, no response needed. His reply came within the hour. Noted. If he continues, we can send a formal cease and desist. Let me know. I didn't block my father's email address. I didn't block his phone number. Marcus had advised me to keep the lines of communication open, not for reconciliation, but for documentation. If he escalated, if he tried something else, I wanted a record. But I didn't respond. Not because I was angry. The anger had faded, replaced by something quieter and sadder. The recognition that my father would never be the parent I needed him to be. He wasn't capable of it. Maybe he never had been. Some apologies are just another way of asking for what you want. I had learned to tell the difference. I closed my laptop and went back to apartment hunting. I had a life to build, and I wasn't going to build it waiting for my father to become someone he wasn't. February 2025. I signed the lease on a 2-bedroom apartment in Montrose, a neighborhood I'd always loved but could never afford. Red brick building, hardwood floors, a small balcony overlooking a tree-lined street. The rent was $1,800 a month, which would have been impossible 3 months ago. Now it was nothing. But I didn't go crazy with the money. Marcus had introduced me to a financial advisor who specialized in sudden wealth, and together we'd created a plan. Pay off all debts, invest conservatively, live modestly, and set aside funds for something meaningful. That something became the Dawson Foundation. The irony of the name wasn't lost on me. I was using my father's surname, the name he'd been so proud of, the name he'd attached to his reputation, to do something he never would have done: help people who were struggling. The foundation's mission was simple: job training and career transition support for people who had been laid off. I knew what it felt like to lose everything overnight, to sit in a hotel room wondering how you were going to pay next month's rent. I wanted to make that easier for someone else. By March, we had funded 15 scholarships for vocational training programs across Houston, and I called my mother. It was the first real conversation we'd had in 2 years. She picked up on the second ring. Lottie. Her voice was warm, surprised. I saw the article. I'm so proud of you. For winning the lottery? For standing up for yourself. She paused. I should have taught you how to do that a long time ago. I'm sorry I didn't. You taught me by leaving him, I said. It just took me a while to understand. We talked for an hour. It was the beginning of something new. July 2025, 6 months after the hearing. I was sitting on my balcony, drinking iced coffee and watching the summer sun filter through the oak trees, when Derek called with an update. Dad sold the Escalade, he said. The Cadillac? Yeah, legal fees apparently. Harold Benson didn't come cheap, and then there were the court costs you were awarded. He's driving a used Honda now. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel pity either. I just felt nothing, like hearing news about a stranger. How's he doing otherwise? Not great, Derek sighed. He still goes to church, but he sits in the back now. Doesn't talk to anyone. Bill Hartley and Tom Reeves haven't spoken to him since the trial. He keeps saying everyone turned against him unfairly. Of course he does. The thing is, Lottie, I don't think he'll ever get it. I've tried talking to him, really talking, about what he did to you, to Mom, to all of us. He just deflects. changes the subject, acts like he's the victim. He's been doing that his whole life, I said. Why would he stop now? I guess I hoped. Derek trailed off. Never mind, it doesn't matter. We were quiet for a moment. I'm flying to Arizona next month, I said. To see Mom. You should come. Yeah? Yeah, she'd like that. And I think it would be good. For both of us. I'll check my calendar, Derek said, but his voice was lighter than it had been at the start of the call. I'd like that. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony for a long time, watching the shadows lengthen across the street. My father was alone in his 4-bedroom house, driving a used car, abandoned by his friends. I was building a life I actually wanted to live. People ask me sometimes what I learned from all of this. They expect me to say something about money, how it changes people, how it reveals who your real friends are, how you should never tell anyone if you win the lottery. And sure, all of that is true. But that's not the real lesson. The real lesson is about boundaries. For 28 years, I let my father define my worth. Every comparison to Derek, every disappointed sigh, every casual insult in front of his friends, I absorbed it all, believing that if I just tried harder, worked harder, achieved more, he would finally see me. The lottery didn't change that. The lottery just gave me the resources to walk away. What changed me was the moment I realized I didn't need his approval. That his opinion of me, parasite, dead weight, failure, said more about him than it ever said about me. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're protection. I didn't cut my father off to hurt him. I cut him off because continuing to engage with him was hurting me. Every conversation, every attempt at reconciliation, every "I'm sorry" that wasn't really sorry. It all came at a cost. My peace, my self-worth, my ability to move forward. Some relationships can be repaired. Some people can change. But you can't force it. And you can't wait forever. My father may never understand what he did wrong. He may spend the rest of his life believing he's the victim, that the judge was biased, that I manipulated the situation, that everyone turned against him unfairly. That's his choice. My choice is to build a life where his opinion doesn't matter anymore. And I have. Forgiveness isn't something you owe to people who hurt you. It's something you give yourself when you're ready. I'm not ready yet. And that's okay. If you're watching this video and you have a parent like mine, someone who only sees your value when you have something they want, someone who calls you names and then acts surprised when you walk away, I want you to know something. You are not a parasite. You are not dead weight. You are not a failure. And if someone in your family can't see that, if they've spent years making you feel small, comparing you to siblings, dismissing your achievements, demanding your resources while offering nothing but criticism in return, then maybe it's time to find people who can. Family isn't just blood. Family is the people who show up for you, who support you without conditions, who celebrate your wins instead of trying to claim them. I found that family eventually. My mother, who I'd lost touch with for years, is now one of my closest friends. My brother Derek, who spent his whole life being the golden child, finally saw the truth and chose to stand with me instead of against me. And I found myself. That's the part no one tells you about setting boundaries. It's not just about keeping toxic people out. It's about making space for the person you're supposed to become. I'm 29 now. I have an apartment I love, a foundation that's helping people rebuild their lives, and a relationship with my mother that I thought I'd lost forever. My father is still out there, in his 4-bedroom house, waiting for me to forgive him on his terms. I'm not going to. But I'm also not going to spend my life being angry about it. I've moved on. And that, more than any lottery check, is the real win. That's my story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story meant something to you, please hit the subscribe button and leave a comment. I read every single one, And if you want to hear more stories like this, check out the video in the description. It's about another family member who thought they could take what wasn't theirs. Spoiler, they were wrong. See you in the next one.